Hey everyone, today I'm making a series of cards using some leftover paper from Modascrap and some leftover ephemera from the same kit, and then also some leftover ephemera from other projects and from a Black Friday set that I got from Paper Rose. Now this pack here is actually called Spring Poppies, and I have used it in other videos. I'll put a link below to the other projects. It's quite unusual in that the paper comes in a 6 by 12 size. So very, very unusual. And in the paper pad itself, it does have that colored strip of paper across the top, and it does not have any kind of punch hole to be, hung on a display stand or something in a store. So I decided that I was going to capitalize on the contrast of the colored strip at the top. My other project, I have cut off 4 inches at the bottom of these, the 4 by 6 inches. So these ones are 8 by 6 with a little bit of extra. And at the moment, I'm just doing a little bit of an experiment to try and figure out how big should I make the elements that I'm going to attach to my cards. And the first ones I made quite wide. These ones I'm doing the opposite and I'm making them quite narrow. And then I'm just trying them out on the front of a 5 1/4 by 4 inch panel to figure out what size I think would work best. Once I'd figured out the size, I did cut them down in half at 2.5 inches and 3.5 inches, which together makes up that 6-inch width. And what that meant is I ended up with 2 different size elements for the front of cards. And you'll see when I continue putting these together that I've used a different approach for each and that they look a little bit different on the front of the cards just because of the sizing. I was really trying to not cut them down to 3 by 3, which was then a standard size and everything would be exactly the same. The other thing that I did was I thought maybe I would actually use some of the gorgeous pattern paper to create the base layer. And then partway through, I switched and started to use, or decided that I was going to use these really dark, neutral colored cardstock panels instead. And because I didn't want them to be completely plain, I actually used a series of different piercing dies. So they do not cut through, they just do a pierced pattern. So I'll put some links below to the ones that I've used today. There was a couple of them were scrapbook.com, and then I think the other ones were Pink Fresh Studios, but I'm not completely sure. I used probably 4 different ones. I have those in my stash and I don't use them anywhere near often enough, and those ones can be a little bit expensive. So this was a great way for me to actually use up some of those products that have been sitting there and not being used as much as they could be. The other thing today is I've done some basic white matting around everything, and again it's going to contrast with those neutral tones at the back. And then I've got some of my usual little happy birthday sentiments already stamped out, and some of those I mat on a black matting layer and some of them I leave how they are. If possible, I don't do the black mat just because it saves me a little bit of time and I'm making a lot of cards today, but often it will need to be it's just that little bit of extra contrast between the paper that it's going on, or maybe I just think it's not going to stand out quite enough if it doesn't have the black. And with these cards here, you can see with the absolute gorgeous poppy paper, it does have the red, black and white, and then in some places a little bit of grey. And so the black matting ties the card together really nicely as well. The rest of the tones of this paper pad match really nicely together. And you can see here these little hearts. They're kind of a pink and a red and a black. They also match with these little poppies and flower designs. I was absolutely determined that I was going to use every single piece of the ephemera that came in the little pack. And it actually worked out quite well that I could put 2 or 3 of those items on these little feature size rectangles. If you could just imagine these little long stem poppies here, they would be totally lost on a bigger card. If you haven't used Modascrap before and you're thinking about trying out the brand, what I highly recommend is checking out scrapbook.com. They have Spring Poppies, which is the one I'm using here today, and Lovers in the Air for $5.99. So given there's 21 sheets of quite heavyweight paper, and there's 20 designs single-sided, and then there's some cut aparts for the 21st piece. And because they're 12 by 6 inches, they're the equivalent of 2 paper pads, and they're only $5.99. So a really good place to start. For some reason, it's only those 2 that are the cheaper price. The others I think are about $13, I think, but I've absolutely loved using them. There's several videos on my channel now using the same papers in different ways, and the ability to kind of cut these apart here and create some interesting feature elements without too much effort has made me really love this brand even more. If you don't have this paper and you don't have something similar, what you could do is just using your existing paper, whatever you've got in your stash, if you cut down a slightly narrower element and then something that's about 1/4 of an inch wide, then you can create that two-tone look and mat it on white. So basically cut 2 pieces of paper and then just butt them up next to each other, and you could recreate a really similar design to this. Now you can see I'm putting 2 or 3 elements on each of the cards, and I'm just working through until I've used up every single piece of the ephemera and my little happy birthdays here. I'm pretty sure that every card I created today was a happy birthday one, but I might have snuck something else in there. It's been a little while since I actually recorded this. Now that I'm getting down to the smaller pieces, I'm looking through trying to find what is something that's not too busy on the background so that I can use the final ones of those poppies. Because if you have a really, really busy paper, then it tends to really overshadow anything you put on top of it. So for most of those, I will just add a simple happy birthday without the ephemera. And for the others, I'm going to dig into my stash of paper rose goodies. And one of the ones that I determined is my absolute favorite is a set called Woodland Friends. I've used it again in plenty of other videos, and I loved it so much I actually did go and get a couple of extra packs of the ephemera so that I have it in my stash, because I know just the color tones are gorgeous and the little woodland animals are absolutely so cute. So you will see those in just a moment as I work through finishing off these ones here. On my desk, you can see that I've got the kind of taupe colour and maybe dark mushroom colour backing panels on the left-hand side. And I've already matched up the pattern papers for which one I'm going to put on the darker colour and which ones I'm going to put onto the lighter colour. But because only some of the feature elements are finished, I'm just putting things aside and completing a few of the cards where I can. Obviously, I haven't added them to the actual card bases yet, which are going to be standard A2 white card bases, so 5.5 by 4.25. I'm just running through them with my liquid glue, just adding these onto the bottom left-hand corner of the backing panels. Now, as I was working through this, I really love the look, but I thought maybe it would be a good idea to amp them up a little bit, which is why for the rest of them, I actually do bring out the piercing dies so that I create a little bit more interest on the backing panel itself. So these first ones are slightly different to the other half that I made, but you can see because I was experimenting a little bit on the feature elements, you can see on the left-hand side, there's a bigger panel there. There's a few that are a little bit different, and each card when I was finished today looked different because of the ephemera also. Now that that first batch are finished, I'm working through with some of my leftover ephemera that I talked about earlier. I did get a Black Friday deal, gosh, it's probably a year and a half ago now, and so I have this total jumble of mismatch of ephemera from Paper Rose. Every single one of them is gorgeous, but they're all different tones and different colours and different styles. So I managed to sort through them and pick out some of the ones that I thought would match the colour tones of this paper pack. And these ones here with these gorgeous little, they almost look like they've been watercoloured, these little animals. These are the ones that are Woodland Friends. Highly recommend them. They are very cute. There are some that are actually quite large where the animals are painted inside a circle, and they make a really brilliant feature element on any card design that you would be creating. So here I'm just trying to figure out which animals would be friends. I'm putting together the moose and the fox, and then I've got the raccoon there in the middle. With the deer, that was a really interesting one because there's a couple where there's a couple of small deer that are actually, or baby deer, that are actually lying down. So I kind of jumbled around a bit trying to figure out which animal to put with which, and then what kind of contrasting background as well. So as soon as I moved, I assume that's a reindeer and a normal deer. When I moved them onto that dark color on the bottom left, they really popped off the card more than they did on a pattern paper. So I tried lots of different combinations. I fiddled around. I highly encourage you just to try it out. The other thing is it really doesn't matter if they go off the edge of the little rectangle. So you'll see on the left-hand side where I've got I think that's a eucalyptus branch. It's going all the way off the edge of that pattern paper, and in the end, that was one of my favourite cards. Absolutely love this bear as well, and I've put the little owl standing on his back. Not realistic at all, but they look like they could be, friends. Okay, I'm running through and sticking these together, which is not particularly interesting, but you can see from what's scattered on my desk the style of card that I was making. And you can see with, I think, is that a red robin or a wren? I'm not sure. I don't think we have them in Australia, or if we do, maybe we don't have them in Victoria. But this little bird here is absolutely gorgeous. And I've got a much bigger sentiment there with the thinking of you. And then I've just perched the bird up on top of the top letter, which is the K. And so it just stands out a little bit and adds, a little bit of interest in terms of the design. Here's the backing panels, and you can see they're a little bit bent because they've been through my die machine. I'm using liquid glue so that I don't get anything that's tearing up around the edge. And I've zoomed in here on one of the piercing designs. This is one of the ones from scrapbook.com. It's hard to see throughout the video, but there are 3 or 4 different piercing panels that I'm using, and I've just run them all through my die machine. Didn't take too long at all. And then when you add the element on top of it, they do look a little bit more special than the plain ones. So I think these are probably my favorite, more so than the ones that just have the plain cardstock at the back. Now, I mentioned earlier that I thought I created all birthday cards, but it looks like I snuck in one little Christmas card here, and that would just be because of the mixture of ephemera that I had. So it matched so nicely with the tones that worked out really, really cute. And you'll see here that I ended up just doing all of the feature panels onto the backing panels themselves, and then once they were all completed, I then connected them all to the cards as a second step. For this one here, it's a really great example of, as I said earlier, you can hang the element off the edge of the design. And I really could have had it even further because you can go all the way out to the width of the card and not have any issues putting something in an envelope. And often that's a really great way just to add some interest, is literally just to have things really not be perfectly centered and have them a little bit offset, and just adding a little bit of creativity to your card layout. So I love that one. I think that turned out super, super pretty. If you're enjoying the video, it'd be great if you could hit the like button or consider subscribing. That is how YouTube knows to share the video with more viewers, so thank you for that. For the slightly bigger pieces of paper, I took a different approach. Rather than adding quite a few elements on top, I just let the paper shine. Honestly, in real life, it is so gorgeous. So I've just used some of these spare thinking of you sentiments that are die cut really nicely around the edge of the stamping. So rather than being a big white element, these look really pretty once they're attached. And I'll put them on a white card base and then they will be done. I have put another video here that I think you might enjoy. Have a great day.